Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Soul Meets Heart, the podcast for your soul. My guest today grew up in the Wild West early years of Aspen, Colorado, where risk wasn't a phase, it was a way of life. He worked hard labor and downright dangerous jobs just to fund a shot at alpine ski racing and got fast enough to even crack the top 10 in the country at some point. Then came a stint in television news, writing, and you know, in his words, he was trying to become visible, but with not so much substance. At 39, it all caved in. What followed was a collision with a mentor who changed the entire trajectory of his life and led to the book he's writing now and one he already has out. The book that's out now is Candid, Cheeky, and Unflinching Memoir about choosing an exam in life. He lives in Denver, runs a monthly men's group, writes a newsletter called Shared Space, and hikes the foothills with his dog. Big welcome, please, to Daniel Sterling.
Thank you, Hugo, but happy to be here.
Awesome, man. Sorry, I had to edit some of the stuff as I was reading it out loud.
Got it.
Thank you for bearing with me here. Daniel, I just want to thank you for being on the show, first of all, and also thank you for everything that you do, man. I appreciate you being a light in the world and just sharing your story, and I'm sure that's going to help illuminate people's paths, whoever's meant to find you, and just wanted to make sure you were thanked for all the work you're doing.
Well, that's kind of you to say. I am efforting, as I always say, if what I am paying forward from what I was given to me, then I will have achieved what I set. So
it's a great way of looking at things. Daniel, we actually have a few traditions on our show, and I'm going to start off with the first one. The first one is actually going to be a very simple, quick meditation that I am going to ask you to participate with me. It's super easy. All you have to do is we're going to take one big, deep breath in, and we're going to inhale. So we're going to inhale. And as you're inhaling, think of all the things you love. So inhale love, 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 love. And then when you exhale, we're going to exhale gratitude. So thank you, thank you, thank you. All the things you're thankful for. Could be even just for the breakfast this morning. Doesn't have to be anything super crazy.
No, man, I got a list.
So thank you for doing that. We do that to kind of get ourselves grounded before the conversation and to just be present, to help us be present. Also, Daniel, I have another tradition on the podcast where my previous guest left you a positive message. They have no idea who you are. They have no idea what you do in life, but they left you this message for you. Hopefully it resonates. If it doesn't, then hopefully it lands for someone listening in the audience today. The message that they left for you is, may you find happiness and joy more tomorrow and more each day that follows. You deserve it.
How great is that?
It's a great message to get.
Yeah. Joy is a favorite of mine.
There you go.
Happiness doesn't resonate with me so much, but because joy has a connotation of a moment of, just greatness, connection, nature. It's like it. Good term.
Yeah. I prefer the term peace myself, because if I'm at peace, that allows joy to just find its way into my life.
Yeah, that and everything else. Peace is also a winner. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So you said risk was your go-to growing up in Aspen.
Yes.
What's the first memory you'd point to as proof of that?
Good question. So my parents built a ski lodge in Aspen in the late 50s. And so it was pretty much a playground for me, but it was 2 stories. And I remember I would jump off the second story. I would climb up on the railing of the second story walkway to the guest rooms and jump out onto the lawn, which was 12 feet down. So I'm probably 6 years old doing that.
Wow. 6 years old?
That's the first one I can remember. Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like you're always an adventurer.
A little more than that. Yeah. So adrenaline became a very big part of my life.
Yeah. Can you talk to me about some of the hard labor or dangerous jobs that you've taken? I know that you mentioned that you took those kind of dangerous jobs just so you could ski. So maybe can you unlock that or break that up for me?
Yeah, I was funding my ski racing, my travels. So, Aspen at the time was starting to grow. So construction was a big part of that. So I worked, the hard jobs were like what they call carrying hod. Anyone who's ever done that can appreciate what it is, which is mixing concrete, lifting 5-gallon buckets of concrete up 3 tiers of scaffolding so the mason could yell at us because it was too wet or too dry or whatever. And then following that was brick or masonry blocks. That was or digging ditches in river rock in that valley. That was probably the most horrendous of the hard labor jobs. And then one summer when I was 17, I was like, I'm going to have an adventure. So I, through a connection, somehow I got a job working on an oil rig in southern Wyoming outside
Mm,
Rock Springs. That was dangerous. Worked with this guy who'd lost like 3 fingers and he'd be looking up and I was like, my God, please don't let that be me.
yeah,
So yeah, and it was a hard ass driller who was yelling at everybody, me included. So not a pleasant job, but I thought, well, I guess I made a memory, right?
yeah. It's a scary thing to lose fingers. I would like to keep all of mine if I can. So, out of all those jobs that you did any of them teach you something that you still use or you still carry with you today?
Well, I was a carpenter and I had a very good friend who was meticulous. And whenever I worked carpentry, after I worked with him, he lived in my head. So I was like, it's good enough. It's good enough. He's like, no, I owe him a debt of gratitude because I still do small projects around my house, and table saws and chop saws. And so I try to remember his message, which was, you know, do it right, go for excellence. You're going to come up short. But so I love being a carpenter. I mean, something I can still do, and it's a skill,
Yeah,
and I appreciate having it.
yeah, yeah. That's an awesome skill to have. I actually follow a couple people that do carpentry because they build their own like treehouse or picnic table
Yeah,
or like their kids' playground set, and I'm just kind
yeah,
of like, man, I feel like I'm useless next to this guy, but it's pretty cool skill to have, especially in the world of AI that's developing. Those are one of the skills that will still be unique and still probably be even more valuable now in this world. Now, I want to touch a little bit on how you were fast enough to be in the top 10 in US for skiing. What is that gap between very good and great at something actually look like on the inside?
yeah. That is also an insightful question. So, because I was tall, I'm 6'1", I was out of balance a lot on skis. So at the time, my coming up, there was the 3 disciplines: slalom, giant slalom, and downhill. So slalom is the quick, fast, twitchy. That was not me. So in downhill, I could, get in trouble, you know, get back on my skis, inside on my skis, and still recover and still, carry my speed and make the next turn. And so I became a downhiller. So 80 miles an hour on skis. And people go, wow, that's incredible. And I always think of a race in Switzerland. It was a few years back. They clocked one of those guys going 100,
Oof.
and they tightened the course and changed it because they were like, that's just too fast, we're going to kill somebody. So it's a hairy ride and it comes fast. And so I was just determined to go as far as I could in the sport. I started when I was 8 and finally quit at 24, which is usually when most people start to come into their own, but
Yeah.
at that point I was just burnt. So top 10 for me was one year in Vail, what they call the Junior Nationals, which was the best kids under the age of 18 across the entire nation.
Yeah.
So I was sixth, and that was a big deal. And, we had a banquet that night, and I was vibrating because I thought, I feel pretty good about this.
Yeah.
And I got my little medal with sixth place on it, and I felt pretty good. So I always say I could see the top, but I didn't get there because if you win that race, then the U.S. ski team takes notice, and usually they put you on what's called the C team.
Mm.
And the good guys work their way up from to the B team and then the A team. And then, you're an Olympian, which is what my brother was. And he didn't give a shit. And it was everything to me. It came easy for him and it was a struggle for me in every way.
Mm.
So,
Do you think there was a moment during while you were doing this where you could pinpoint when you knew you weren't going to close that gap between like being in six and getting closer to that number one spot?
yeah, after that sixth, I sort of plateaued
Mm.
and never got faster, never got closer. But at that point, the coach at Colorado University, Bill Morrolt, when CU was winning all the national NCAA championships, he called me one summer and said, "Come ski race for me, full athletic scholarship." And I thought, wow, my ego loved
Yeah.
that. But at that time, I was like, school and me just did not agree. And I just said, I can't do it. I didn't tell him that on the phone, but I politely declined and said, thank you very much. I don't have regrets, but I'm always curious what that could have been. It could have been fun skiing for a team and, traveling with these guys and we're all, you know, racing for, together
Yeah.
to finish as a team. But the point is that I was determined to go as far as I could. And so eventually I turned professional and started, racing for money. And that was back to the twitchy slalom and giant slalom, which was not my wheelhouse. So there was a struggle, I was making a little money here and there. And then I burned out because
Yeah.
I was so determined and beat myself up. I was very hard on myself and it was a hard time, definitely.
Yeah. Was the hard time self-inflicted or was it circumstantial to what was happening around you?
The first one, absolutely, you're right on. Everything at that point in my life was self-inflicted. I had a standard and anytime I came up short, I was very hard on myself because I was sort of an introvert and had an older brother who was sort of terrorized me, I survived in a lot of ways by withdrawing from the world.
Mm.
So if I was, he was chasing me down, I would run out into the woods and hide and, just isolate. And after a difficult ski race, I would isolate and no one would hear from me for 10 days as I sat there and imploded in this disaster that was my last ski race and
Yeah.
not finishing where I wanted to. And, all this training, the thing about ski racing, man, it happens so fast and you can fly overseas and, all this build up and finally get in the start. And 50 seconds later, one mistake and your day is done.
Yeah.
You're 5 seconds out or you catch an edge and you're out of the course and it's over. It's not like tennis where you got, 3 sets to recover and work your way back in. So it's brutal in that way and
Yeah.
humble everybody.
I can't even imagine. I've fallen so many times on my butts snowboarding. I can't imagine if I was competing, what that would look like. It's devastating to lose even just in the snowboarding video game. So
There you go.
I know that you used to work in television news as well. You've worked as you described the television news years as adding little substance despite your visibility.
Yeah.
What's a moment on camera that you felt most hollow to you at the time?
I can't say that it felt hollow, but at the end of my 5 years, so kind of to circle back to the beginning, after the ski racing ended, I was like, well, what am I going to do now? I had no education. So I thought, well, I'll talk about what I know and love, which is ski racing. So I was going to be ski racing broadcaster. That was my aspiration. But it was really about my ego. And I write in the book that I went out into the world in search of the love in my home that had gone missing.
Mm.
So my parents were there, but they were not communicative. They were not as supportive as I wanted them to be. And they didn't protect me from the brother. And
Mm.
so I felt like just got to figure this out on my own. And
Yeah.
so that's what I did. Trial and error for the first 39 years of my life, really. So television news, I worked for the ABC affiliate in Albuquerque, New Mexico, KOAT TV. So out of college, they hired me as a photographer and taught me lighting and framing and editing. And so I could write. And so they put me on the overnight and I was covering crime scenes and murders and fires and all the rest. And my news director liked me. So she said, well, I want to give you this beat. It's called Seven Outdoors. So you go and cover these outdoor activities all across the state. I was like, great. This is right in my wheelhouse. So the first thing I did was ski tips, right? Because here I am, this ski racer. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, I could do this. So I did ski tips and then I covered stories on ice climbing and caving. And I was in a glider shooting video and, nauseated and I'm trying to think all these crazy stories that I did. They sunk a plane in one of the lakes and high up in New Mexico and to train these EMTs to dive and recover guys, if there was a plane crash in the water, they could dive down. So
Yeah.
did a story on that. I skydived twice. And so I was like, this is pretty great. And like I said, it was really good for my ego because I got a little bit of visibility. And I thought, oh, yeah, accolades in the world. People would recognize me on the street. And I had a very cute girlfriend. So I was pretty full of myself.
Mm.
And at the end of 5 years, you asked me the question about this hollow moment. I was just like, this is just not doing it anymore for me. But I will tell you that if you want to hear a story about worthlessness, I'll share one with you because it was one of the very large close calls in my life that really got my attention. So I got involved with this friend who was into freebasing cocaine, and he would roll up what he called a baseball. Richard Pryor was big
Mm.
on freebasing. And what it does is it purifies, all the impurities out of the cocaine and you're left with the real product and you smoke. So there I am, under contract with this TV station and putting everything at risk and running around with this guy foolishly. I mean, the stupid shit that I did and got away with it. I always say there was some higher source looking out for me. I
Mm.
know this. So this friend of mine and I said, well, I'm going to go do this story on the Torchlight Parade at Taos Ski Valley, right? 12 o'clock at night. There's all these tourists gathered at the base lodge, and then the locals go up on the hill. They ride the chairlift in pitch black and ski down and light their torches, and then they do this little torchlight parade. Everybody, ooh and oh, right? So this friend of mine and I are driving from Albuquerque to Taos, 2.5 hour drive, whatever, and freebasing the whole way. And I'm driving, and I'm just vibrating. I'm so high. It was just awful. I always say cocaine is the most evil drug there is. So we pull into this convenience store in Espanola, New Mexico, 10 o'clock at night. We go in there and my buddy goes into the bathroom. He's into needles and he goes into the bathroom to shoot up, of all things, and leaves the door open. And I don't know this, but all of a sudden I see these two state patrolmen wander into the convenience store. I'm like, oof. And then I look over and I see the doors open to the bathroom and I know my buddy's in there. I'm like, please, 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 please. Don't, don't let us get caught. And before I know it, my buddy, I see him pass right in front of me and he knows these guys are there. And we go to the car and I drive away very slowly. So, we had a quantity in the car. And I write in the book, this sort of class of felony in New Mexico at the time, would have gone to jail, would have made would have been picked up on the wire services, New Mexico television reporter busted for cocaine possession. And, the other stations would have covered it. I would have been a convicted felon. I mean, it's just horrendous what could have happened. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Talk about gratitude. But I was up on the mountain now, higher than hell, carrying a $30,000 beta cam with no ski poles and a shitty pair of skis I was on, and the edges were dull. So I was all over the place on from the lift trying to get down to the torchlight parade and sliding all over the place and trying to shoot video them of these guys. And then I had to appear on camera, what they call a stand up, which is 30 seconds of me talking on camera. And I'm just shaking. I'm so high at the time. So you ask about a hollow moment. That was it. It was the worst story I ever filed. And I'm surprised I could even pull anything of substance out of it. But I made the trip and my news director knew I'd gone, so I had to file it. But talk about dodging the proverbial bullet. And I thought, you got to be smarter. I'm talking to myself. So,
Yeah. Wow. I mean, thank you for sharing that story with us. That's crazy to think of what consequences would have occurred had things been different. Wow.
you and I would not be talking, that's for sure.
Yeah, probably not. Or who knows? Maybe it would be a retrospective looking back. Who knows?
That is true.
But either way, I'm glad things didn't go in the negative direction. You used the word cratered for what happened at 39. Without asking you to relive the worst of it, what's the smallest, most ordinary detail from that period that still sticks with you?
Well, I couldn't get a job at Blockbuster Video. I was writing screenplays at the time. This was right before I met I was like, you got to be kidding. Because, I was looking at Quentin Tarantino's story, and it was a good one. I think he worked in a video store, and so he could take all these videos home and dissect them. And it's like, okay, here's how you structure a movie, and just fast, watch it, rewind, and listen to the dialogue and learn. I thought, why not? I'll be close to free videos for something I really love, which movies have always lived in my heart. So the fact that I didn't get that job, but here's the thing, Hugo, that not getting that job changed the entire trajectory of my life because a friend of mine was living in Tahoe at the time. He's like, and I was broke. He said, come up, I'm siding this house and you can help me do that and make some money and live over my garage and you can write. I was like, great. Turned out to be one of the greatest summers of my life. So towards the end of my stay there was a writers conference. I think it was Squaw Valley Writers Conference or something. I was like, so they had a mixer, right? I didn't sign up. I didn't pay the money to go, but I was like, oh, I'll go to the mixer. And so I'm there listening to this guy talk about his book. I'm like, yeah, it's not doing it for me at all. But I felt someone looking at me and I looked up and caught eyes with this woman who looked away quickly. Turns out she was also a writer and also lived in Newport Beach where I was. So we ended up working together and being in a relationship. And she was editing a book for this guy, Lloyd. And Lloyd had a men's group and he took pity on me and invited me. And so I went. I'd never been in therapy, never even heard of a men's group, much less attended one. And first meeting in there, they asked Lloyd, said, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? So I started telling my story and I just lost it. I started just weeping and couldn't stop. And I was so embarrassed. I'm like, I don't even know any of these guys. And they're looking, I'm like breaking down in tears. But I met this guy, Daniel, in the men's group. And he's the one who he was hairstylist and he was doing the hair of my mentor. He's like, you should meet her. Glad. She's amazing. I was like, great. She's like conscious. And I was like, great. What's that mean? So losing that job at Blockbuster Video, you asked about a small moment that was really huge. That was it. Because if I'd gotten the job, never would have gone to Tahoe, never would have met her.
Yeah. It's interesting how life can be serendipitous like that.
Look back on one's life, man, and watch how the planets align. It never ceases to amaze me.
Yeah. What was it about her approach, your mentor, that was different from maybe help you've tried before or the type of help that was normally available?
Well, first off, there was no help for me, and there was never any help before. I was literally figuring everything out on my own up until age 39 so she had her own mentor, and that mentor of hers studied with, I think, Rollo May. Anybody knows about Rollo May was really about bringing everything back inward and personal accountability. And, you know, I have to take responsibility for who I am in the world and
Yeah.
to myself, to the people I love, be a good citizen. So these two mentors they're not PhDs or lettered or they're not therapists. They're none of that. But my mentor had a lot of pain in her life and she recognized that in me. And so her wisdom was hard earned and we did what was called self study and which is very far reaching and language is limiting. So it's kind of difficult to articulate it, but its first thing is personal accountability. It's like, what is my role in this disconnection that I'm in with this person in my life? What have I said? What's my body language? What's my tone of voice? Am I accusatory? So my inclination to withdraw and implode and isolate was not going to work with her. So I had an agreement with her that I was just going to hang tough and talk about these difficult issues and where I went emotionally when I would, see there was a group of 7 of us and I would see them all connected and upbeat and I would be struggling with myself and withdrawn. And she knew it. And she would look at me and go, "What's going on with you? And where have you gone?" So to be in that space with 6 people looking at me and was pretty hairy, I got to tell you, and to honestly own up to it. And finally, one day I was just like, well, and I would fight them and I was defiant and I was pissed off a lot and I just wasn't getting it.
Mm.
Until one day I just like, screw it. I'm just going to talk about it. It's like they're all looking at me and I'm argumentative and in a difficult place myself. I just said, well, I don't want to be here. I don't like any of you. I don't like me. I just, all I want to do is leave.
Yeah.
And she said, great, good start. And so, they talk about the truth being liberating will set me free. That is as accurate as it gets. So I don't know if I'm rambling here, Hugo, but my takeaway from all of it was that, and she spoke to it very well. It's like, get to know yourself so well that all these issues of yours have less and less horsepower, have less and less impact on your life, have less and less control of your behavior to where one day they just will no longer cease to direct your behavior and they'll just become very matter of fact. It's like, yeah, that's why I speak so honestly about, my behavior and all this trouble I got in and the drugs I did and the bad shit that I did. And because it's very liberating. And
Yeah.
today it's just like, I would talk about this with anyone, I'd just say, yeah, I was out of control. I was troubled. I was angry. I was, struggling. Is what I was.
Yeah.
And looking for somebody, what I call the wise tribal elder, to come and put his hand on my shoulder, him or her, and say, "This way, my boy." And she showed up.
Yeah. Was there a piece of her guidance that you actively resisted? And before you answer that, I want it to be something specifically that you had to be talked into or even argued yourself into eventually.
So when I would emotionally withdraw, that was the toughest one for me
Mm.
because, even in relationships that I was in with girlfriends, I would emotionally withdraw and it would take me sometimes a couple of days where I was just quiet and withdrawn and pissy with them. I don't know how any of them stayed with me until it passed. It was like a storm cloud that finally passed. And then I could sort of reemerge and start to become a little more lively and, regain my sense of humor. So, and she could read energy like nobody's business. So the minute that I started to withdraw, she would pick it up
Yeah.
and she wouldn't always talk about it right away, but she would defer to what she called universal timing, where it was like the universe would give her her moment. to say, I find you withdrawn, Daniel. What's going on?
Mm.
Go, oh my God, am I that transparent? And I was. I mean, she could see all the way through me, but she was tough and she needed to be because I was a pain in the ass. I mean, I was defiant. So she was the perfect match for me because she would get rigorous with me. And at one point she said, you got to take your leave for 2 months. And, you can't be part of the group and I'm not going to see you until you get a hold of yourself.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I'm being sent away. It was tough, hard 2 months.
Yeah.
But I came back and I hung tough, Hugo, man. If there's anything that I do, it's persevere and it serves me well.
Yeah. Don't give up. I like that you mentioned that because a lot of people are ready to throw in the ropes or, just call it a match and be done with it. But it's important not to.
Don't
Um,
do it.
I want to talk about, was there something that you had to unlearn during this whole process that you didn't expect that you had to unlearn?
Interesting question. Unlearn. Well, I guess you could say that I had to unlearn everything about who I was because when I met her, I was my ego. So the first night I met her, she very innocently, but there was nothing innocent about anything that she asked. She said, well, tell me about your childhood. So, I had my story and it was, excuse me, I thought it was a pretty good one. So my mother was a writer and, you know, published books, had a column in Ski Magazine, and she won $15,000 on a game show, television game show in the late 50s. That was seed money to build our lodge.
Wow.
Photographic memory. She was a piece of work. And the brother was an Olympian, and my father was funny as hell. So we had a good story, and this sort of this glamorous life in Aspen, Colorado, right? And so I told her this whole story. It took about a half an hour to tell my story. And she looked at me at the end of that and said, well, that all sounds great. Why are you so miserable? So you asked me what I had to unlearn. It was everything because I didn't know how to be an authentic person. She would
Mm,
look at me and say, you do to get, Daniel. In other words, I would see someone that I thought could help me and I would ingratiate myself with them and talk them up and be enthusiastic because I thought they could do something for me.
mm.
And I was a taker. So, my ego and my defenses and my insecurities were so far reaching. I had to unlearn all of it to answer your question.
And to transition a little bit about talking about your memoir, when you started writing that, was there a chapter or scene that was hardest to write, honestly? Not necessarily hard emotionally, but hardest to get it right on the page?
Uh, every chapter was like that. I was very fortunate. Again, the universe was very kind to me. I found a writing coach I took this 6 month seminar. It was a workshop rather, last a little more than a year ago. And I was assigned this writing coach, Laura, and she was just a really good fit. And the workshop ended and she ended up stepping away from that program and went out on her own. Like as soon as I was done with the program, I was thinking, well, maybe should I do the next program with them and go on with this next writing coach who I didn't really connect with. And 2 days later, I got an email from Laura saying, I've gone out on my own. I was like, great, let's go to work. So without her, it's tough for me. I don't know about other writers, but it's hard for me to find my way. So,
Mm.
writing is a grind. But when I get good notes from her, man, I am so happy because I was like, finally I got it. And there's times where we'll go through 6 iterations of a chapter. And she's like, not quite, not quite. I'm like, fuck. Am I allowed to say
Yeah,
drop
you can
F
cuss.
bomb?
Yeah, you could drop F bomb, B bomb, as long as it's not insulting anyone. It's
Yeah,
fine.
no. Yeah. So I get those notes. I'm like, fuck, I didn't get it. So, but she's just the best because she knows me so well. I mean, we went through this entire memoir and now we're 8 chapters into the man book, what I call the man book. And so I'm always holding my breath. It's usually 2 days where I send her half a chapter and I'm like, okay, did I get it? Did I get it? Did I get it? It comes back. I'm like, I didn't get it. I'm close. So, but again, the fact that I don't have to try and figure this out on my own, which is what I did with screenwriting, again, I tortured myself because I
And
thought, well, I'll just write and read good scripts. And I took one class and I thought, I'll figure this out on my own. 2 years later, it was 5 screenplays later. I was like, I ain't getting this.
yeah.
I'm just not getting this. So thank God for a good writing coach.
Yeah. You mentioned the man book, and I also know you run a monthly men's group. Can I ask you what's the most common thing a man gets wrong walking into your group the first time?
I don't, that doesn't resonate with me because for whatever reason, on Meetup, there's 108 I have 108 members. I started this 3 years ago and 4 show up, 3 show up, 2 show up. I get it. They don't know what it is, but what I think I bring to this, I mean, I don't claim to have all the answers, but I'm a good listener and I can track people's, what they're saying and I can drill down and ask questions and ask questions, but I learn from the best. I watched Glad, my mentor, run our group for 16 years. We were
Mm,
in that group and she was the same way. She could track dialogue and energy. So the guys, to answer your question, they show up and plug right in. I got to give them credit. And they start talking about their lives and their
mm,
struggles and their their tough marriages and relationships and dating. There's nothing we don't cover and talk about. And
yeah.
then we laugh, we talk sports a little bit, no politics, no religion, but there's never been a guy where I thought he's not going to fit or he doesn't belong. But they come and go, and it, it it's disappointing. But I don't get these guys that come in and are full of themselves and you know hog the bogart the joint, as they used to say. So I've been fortunate that way, but I do want to build it.
So let's talk about this man book a little bit. I'm curious because right now you see a very big divide where you have a large group of people who are like they want to say a man has to be a certain way, and then there's another group of people who are like the patriarch is dangerous and it needs to change.
Yes.
So where does this man book fall, and what is this about? Where are your thoughts on this?
Very happy to talk about what it is to be a man in the world today. I have a lot to say because I've had a lot of treacherous experiences with men. I was talking to you earlier off air about growing up in Aspen in the 60s and 70s, man. There was a lot of dark male energy in that valley. A lot of pissed off men,
Mm,
alcoholics, and it's not what it is today. Today it's just an abomination of wealth and talk about ego. Jesus, that town. It will always be home and will always have a place in my heart. And I love to go and skiing's great. And I have friends there. But so what I was saying to you earlier is that Glad used to say the best example is a bad example. Well, my childhood in many ways was a bad example. So I have a lot to write about, saying, here was my experience, do the opposite. And because you talk about my cratering when at the end of the screenplay writing, I cratered because I was just a very lost man in the world
mm,
and too afraid to ask for help. And that's a terrible place to be. It really is. So the premise of the book is that good parenting is about positive energy of the feminine and the masculine type. And to raise a good boy in this case into a man that is a good citizen and who can go out into the world in balance with those two energies and confident of who they are, not cocky, um, someone of service who's kind, but fierce when he needs to be, compassionate, tough, resilient, logical, nurturing, loving, good listener, good friend, good partner, good father, son, brother, what have you. So to be someone in balance is a beautiful thing. And so God forbid that I ever be preachy. And Laura's very good about that. She said, yeah, you're getting a little bleeding into that area of being preachy. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. But so I talk about me. And so, but I do say we got to do better because I think that there's a lot of certainly young men that are struggling and a lot of men who feel very alone. They may be surrounded by family and friends, but feel very alone. And believe me, I've been there and it's pretty hellish. It really is. So I hope that maybe I can provide a little bit of light in that way.
Yeah.
But what I am doing ultimately with these two books, everything I am saying to you right now, I am paying forward what was freely given to me by Glad, this mentor of mine. So I feel a great responsibility to articulate it, to honor the work, and to say it in a way that is people can grab onto it and say, I can apply that to my life and improve my life in a seemingly small way.
Yeah.
And you know, that is, I'm on this mission. I
Yeah.
can't say it any other way.
Which I think is wonderful because, as you mentioned, there are, I think, a lot of people, not just men, but people struggling and feeling alone. And I think it has to do with being the lack of acceptance of who you are and what you think you need to be for others. A lot of that, learning to let go of what others are like, how you should look for other, like how you should look to others, is a challenge. I think a lot of times. I remember when I first started my podcast in 2016, I was like, but what if nobody listens to me and it sucks? And my mentor at the time was like, well, if nobody's listening to you, no one will know it sucks because no,
Good answer.
no one's going to hear it. So I truly believe that what you're doing is a wonderful thing. And like the field of dreams, if you build it, they will come. So I hope the right people find you and find your book and whatnot. Can
Uh,
can I ask you about your newsletter? It's called Shared Space,
yes,
and one of your before actually before that question, your newsletter is called Shared Space. What does a shared space look like for you?
question. I was hoping you would ask that. So shared space was one of our fundamentals in the work that we did.
Mm,
So being in a shared space with another is, think about it. It's really everything. So who am I going to be sitting with a friend or my partner or whoever? Am I going to be supportive? Am I going to be enthusiastic? Am I going to celebrate their victories? Even though my knee hurts, I'm cranky, I'm tired. All I want to do is crawl into bed. But my friend is having this spectacular day. Am I going to be celebratory of that or am I going to be pissy?
mm,
So that's who I used to show up, depending on the day you got me of the week. And so Glad said, no, that doesn't fly anymore. You got to work and find your way through this and get to the other side, we used to say.
mm,
So shared space. And, am I going to talk to people that are encroaching on my values and talking to me in ways that are disrespectful?
mm,
Or I can say, no, I'm sorry, that's not going to fly. So shared space can be everything you can imagine. It's work, it's home, it's family, it's all these very loaded situations because we never know what we're going to get from people. So ultimately, who am I going to be in those moments? And am I going to be my own advocate? Am I going to be rigorous with people when I need to be and say, that's enough. You need to stop. or I'm going to, or I'm going to be, compassionate and, they've got some terrible prognosis that they just heard. Am I
Mm,
going to be that friend that is going to, you know, bring a little bit of light and they're going to feel maybe just a little better, but they're going to know that I am there for them no matter what. That's shared space,
oh,
touching on it because it's so far reaching, but
yeah,
it's everything and it makes a life.
saves lives too. That's powerful, man, being there for someone. I really like that. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Absolutely.
I found one of your pieces. It was called Where the Riches Are.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you, where are the riches for you right now?
Doing this work, I'm determined to get this first book, what I call Hungry. That's the name of my memoir. I want to get that published and obviously the second one too. And, I need subscribers to my newsletter. That's what publishers are looking for in this world of books today. For an unknown writer like myself, they need to know that I've got a following and they can extrapolate a certain number of sales out of that following and so on and so forth. So my where the riches are for me today is these people in my life that I'm very close to and enrich my life. My dog, these mountains that I live in, that I can get on skis and, Beaver Creek or Vale, I love the terrain and that's really joyful for me. And hike,
Yeah.
occasionally music, but writing is so big for me. It's just such a part of me today. And writing my truth is just the greatest. And I can do it anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's where my riches are.
Nice. I didn't even get to ask you about your dog. I think his name is Big.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's great that you mentioned it as part of your riches. I love that. We have a soft spot for animals on the show.
Awesome.
I do want to ask you or tell you actually, because this is another tradition of the podcast. I used to be a rapper and I used to sing and rap and
Nice.
do this kind of music. And part of rapping includes freestyle battles. And so, not that we're gonna battle or I'm not gonna make you rap, I promise. But what I call this next section of the podcast is the soul freestyle. So basically, I'm gonna ask you to freestyle something that comes from your soul, your heart, whatever, and I'm gonna draw on a card, and whatever the word is drawn for you, that's the word you're gonna freestyle about.
Awesome.
All right. So,
I'm all
and
nervous.
it doesn't have to rhyme. It doesn't have to be long. It's just whatever comes from your heart based off this word. Okay. And
Well,
the
you're gonna give me a prompt and then I'm gonna give you a word.
no. I'm going to give you the word and then you're going to just whatever comes from your heart,
Okay.
you're going to say it. So the word that you drew is forgive.
Forgive myself for my transgressions, my dishonesty, my grasping for the word, my selfishness, my lack of gratitude, how hard I was on myself.
Mm,
I forgive myself for that.
I'm very glad you do. That's a good, that's a good soul freestyle. Thank you for doing that.
So
Yeah. Daniel, where can people find you? Where can we get notified about your books? Where can we reach out to you? Where can we learn about what you're doing and what how do we keep up with you?
thank you for asking that, Hugo. That's awesome. So everything is pretty much under Daniel Sterling Writer. The website is daniel-sterling.com. Substack is Daniel Sterling Writer. Instagram is Daniel Sterling Writer. So I just put out the first newsletter, the Shared Space newsletter, a couple weeks ago, and I'm about to do another one. So they're all excerpts from the book with a little bit of intro, a little bit of stuff after that, explaining it, and then occasionally I'll Instagram. I'm working with Claude AI, and it's telling me you got to post on Instagram pretty regularly. I'm like, man. So I'm
Yeah.
getting into the groove of it, and it's not easy because I don't get it, and I'm not savvy that way. But so I love taking photos. I'm an old videographer, so that's fun, and I texturize them. So I post photos of my travels on Instagram, and then I'll pull a short passage from the book there. So there'll be more of those. And, I love this podcasting. This is the greatest thing ever because the fact that you and I can sit here and just riff is
Yeah,
really a great thing. And you can start to pull in people that take an interest in, the heart, the soul, growth and healing and, you know, not in any kind of woo-woo way, because that I just have an aversion to, but the healthy kind, where
sure.
we come out the other end, good people
Yeah,
that add to the quality of the world that needs it.
yeah, yeah, I love that. Daniel, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. I really genuinely thankful for the conversation, and I will make sure I add all the links on the YouTube channel and all the social media platforms. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Hugo. I can't express enough appreciation, and I will do the same back. I'm learning how to do that as well to tag you, I guess it is, and promote you as well. So you're doing a great thing here. Keep up
Awesome,
good
man.
work.
Thank you. Thank you. For everybody listening, thank you for joining us today. Just want to end the podcast by saying don't lose faith, lose fear, peace, and let your heart be light. We'll see y'all the next time. Bye, everybody.